awesome cocktail with margarita.
My first tank. I always drink. We drink together.
Subtitles by Dimon Torza.
We often laugh at various memes about alcoholics, as we call them, and we imagine an older man with a bottle of wine and the Ushanka hat, but they're alcoholics. They have evolved, and now he wears a trendy mask of success and holds an expensive glass of wine. A tired mom holds his beer for the information technology guy at the computer or laptop, Prosecco at a blogger's party. And this film is a real journey, a frightening one, into the world of modern addiction, which is young, successful, and incredibly destructive. We will talk with those who see this problem from the inside and with those who have gone through the hell of glamorous drinking themselves. We've all seen the meme, and some people find them very funny. This image of an alcoholic from the past reassures us, myself included, but what if I told you that real alcoholism today looks like this?
I'll decide for myself, probably decide for myself what I'll decide. However you like.
When someone calls you dear or beloved, beloved, I answered, I like it when they call me out to drink. My name is Natasha.
This is my first glass, my name is Natalia, and this is my last skirt.
Oh, alcoholism has gotten younger, it's dressed up in glamour and success, and it might already be in your home. This is 21st century alcoholism, and today we're going to explore it. The positive trend of decreasing alcohol consumption, which began in the early 2000s, ended with the start of the epidemic. Right now, there are 3 trends emerging in our country. The first one is from the Ministry of Health. He says the rise in diagnosed alcoholics refers to those whose chronic addiction has been confirmed by a narcologist. So, if in 2021 doctors identified 53,000 cases, just think about these numbers. In 2022, there were already 54,000 people with addiction. It may seem like a small increase, but before that, for 10 years, the number of alcoholics in our country had been steadily decreasing. The most important point is that alcoholism primarily affects the most economically and socially active part of the population. It's not just grandfathers or 90-year-old grandmothers. It's us, you and me, working and studying actively. Almost a third of new cases occur in the 30-39 age group. The next largest group is the older category of citizens from 40 to 49 years old, which makes up 27%. And after that comes young people, almost 20% of the total number of newly identified alcoholics. The second alarming trend is a significant increase in alcohol sales. We have started buying much more of it. Last year, alcohol sales reached their highest level in the past 8 years. Since 2017, alcohol sales in Naprochenaya have increased by as much as 20%, and record sales have been recorded for vodka and wine. By the way, sparkling wine was bought especially often. Over the past 8 years, its sales have increased by, just think about it, 60%. And trend number 3, which is perhaps the most alarming, alcoholism is getting younger. Among those who are registered for the first time, the share of young people is growing. They are only 20 to 30 years old, and they are becoming addicted very quickly. Previously, clinical alcoholism appeared at 35 to 40, but now it occurs at 25 to 30. Imagine being an alcoholic by 25 to 30. So what do we see? More diagnosed alcoholism cases, increased alcohol sales, and higher concentrations. This indicates that after a long break, the country may face a new wave of alcoholization.
I believe that nobody has started drinking less. It's just that there is commercial addiction treatment now where you can get treated without being registered. Every public clinic has also opened a paid department, which also doesn't put you on record. And accordingly, some people who are very poor don't seek treatment. They use folk remedies and just try to recover on their own. Plus, there's another important point. The number of inpatient beds for medical specialties is constantly being optimized and reduced. After they eliminated the addiction specialist role, health statistics improved and the alcoholic detection rate decreased. Well, that's great, right? We're saving money on hospital beds and specialists. And our statistics are improving because fewer people come to our attention. Only certain people get noticed now. People who end up in the intensive care unit with delirium tremens and psychosis because that's very expensive treatment. Indeed, people need to be registered, and it should be explained why so much money was spent on those who committed crimes and accordingly were also registered. And the third category is people who needed free treatment in public clinics, and because of this free treatment, they ended up having to account for the money spent, while everything else is just the tip of the iceberg. Here they report 1 million alcoholics registered, plus another 10 who solve their problems outside of public health care. And also, let's be honest, there's the alcohol lobby. It's very powerful, it's a multi-billion turnover, it's a huge market, so that's human weakness for you. It's actively exploited. There's targeted advertising aimed at specific groups. Go ahead, drink, be happy.
The history of alcoholism in Russia is very complicated. If you look deeper into history, you can see that in old Russia's people also drank homebrew, beer, and mead. They were infused with hops and beekeeping products, and there were also foreign grape wines. Well, let's say those were a novelty, and vodka was actually used as medicine. And after Peter the Great introduced decrees to open drinking establishments, people started drinking incomparably more. With each year, alcohol consumption rates increased, and in 1914, the authorities launched the first anti-alcohol campaign. This reduced the consumption rate to a record low, just over a liter of ethyl alcohol per person per year. We had never consumed so little before. The country remained sober up until the early 1960s. After that, everything started to increase until it reached record highs at that time. Consider this, 12 liters per person. The peak was in the 1980s when Gorbachev's famous anti-alcohol campaign made headlines. It started 2 months after he took power in 1985. The new policy was created by Politburo members of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union Central Committee, Solomentsov and Legachev. They believed that mass alcoholism was the reason for unemployment and economic stagnation. So, in May 1985, regulations were adopted that intensified the fight against drunkenness and alcoholism, reduced alcohol production, limited the places and times it could be sold, and banned home distilling. The political slogan of the anti-alcohol campaign became the phrase, "Sobriety is the norm of life." I have always supported banning alcohol and wondered how people could even be allowed to sell alcohol. It's basically a neurotoxin, so let's just ban it completely. But this reform actually showed what such strict measures can lead to. Many countries have experienced this, and the same pattern repeated everywhere. Alcohol selling stores closed everywhere, and in some regions, vodka prices and restrictions doubled. Alcohol sale hours like now were introduced. Strict punishments were introduced for drinking alcohol in parks and squares. People were fired from their jobs and expelled from the party for drinking alcohol at work. They also banned banquets for occasions like defending a dissertation and promoted alcohol-free weddings. It was a whole trend, as we like to say today. So what happened? This led to a decrease in alcohol revenues, which were a significant part of the state budget. Creativity was also drawn into the propaganda. For example, scenes involving alcohol were simply removed from movies, and theatrical productions suffered as well. Entire passages from literary works, classics, and even songs were rephrased or removed. But the anti-alcohol policy caused great damage to the grape industry. Vineyards were simply destroyed. About 30 vineyards in Russia were wiped out, and we lost some collectible grape varieties, such as Zekimkara. Retail turnover decreased by 16 billion rubles, and by 1986, the country's budget had essentially collapsed. At the same time, despite the ban, what was happening continued to happen. In all the countries, there was a sharp increase in moonshining and substance abuse, as evidenced by the sudden rise in sales of sugar, BF glue, glass cleaning fluids, and dichlorvos. All of this led to poisoning. Just imagine, that's 44,000 people due to alcohol, of whom 11,000 died, every fourth person, and the number of drug addicts rose to 20,000. 3 decades later, in an interview with Komsomolka, Mikhail Gorbachev admitted his mistakes and those of others who introduced the prohibition laws, which were viewed as mocking his own law. The next president was the embodiment of what he fought against so fiercely. And for a whole 8 years, the country watched the president on television screens. I was little back then, but even I remember all of this. With obvious signs of severe alcohol dependence, here's a short list of incidents that the whole country witnessed, including me and the whole world. Boris Nikolaevich slept through a meeting with the Prime Minister of Ireland. He simply didn't get out of the presidential plane, and the first aircraft had to fly back. I'll be honest, I just overslept. He also made the American President Bill Clinton laugh to tears. And in Germany, he tried to conduct a military orchestra in Germany. The country was drinking itself into oblivion with him, as we always follow our leader's example. So, in 1995, alcohol consumption once again reached a record 18 liters of pure ethanol per person per year. Just imagine, 18 liters. So what? In the wild 1990s, alcoholism killed 3 million Russians. According to the Lancet Journal, more than half of all deaths among the working-age population in Russia were related to alcohol consumption. Just think about these numbers. 52% of Russians aged 15 to 54 died because of alcohol. For comparison, the share of such deaths worldwide during those years was about 4%. Maybe it's historical trauma that affected our cultural subconscious, or maybe we've changed, or maybe the new generation is completely different. But the fact remains that we've moved away from classic binge alcoholism and come to a beautiful, aesthetic glass of wine at dinner, to a bottle of expensive craft beer, and to a beautiful, expensive cocktail. On Friday after work? You see all this every day on social media. You treat it as alcoholism and think that for many it's a sign of success, but that's not the case. All this is socially approved and hyped on social media. Movies and viral reels on the topic even become trends. But all this aesthetic has a simple, not very aesthetic name: everyday drinking. Among people, everyone understands the difference between drinking and alcoholism. It's believed that drinking isn't alcoholism. It's not a disease, and it's not really a problem. I'm just quoting: regular consumption of alcohol in moderate amounts, without signs of dependence or consequences for health or social life. A beer, glass of wine, or cocktail with friends still means independence. You're doing fine. It seems like it's okay, but with regular use, your tolerance to alcohol will inevitably increase, or you'll need more and more alcohol to achieve the desired effect. Let's be honest with ourselves. How often do you limit yourself to just one bottle of beer or one glass of wine? Social drinking is nothing more than the first stage of a major, serious illness called alcoholism. There are 3 stages of this disease in total. So in the first stage, an alcoholic develops a psychological dependence. Alcohol becomes the easiest and most reliable way to get pleasure, and a person starts looking for and always finds ways to justify reasons for drinking alcohol. You need to relieve stress. You need to celebrate a meeting. You need to celebrate a promotion. Or just because it's Friday, or everyone around me is like this, so how am I going to be friends with them? To reach the desired intoxication, you need a larger dose, not just 1 beer, but 2, not just 1 cocktail, but a couple of shots. But an alcoholic stops controlling the amount of alcohol they consume, promising themselves to have just 1 glass. He just can't stop and gets drunk to the point of heavy intoxication. And at this stage, it's the hardest to admit to yourself that there's a problem, but it's already there. Next comes the second stage, where the problems become obvious to our beloved friends, our family, and those around us. And alcoholics develop a physical dependence and withdrawal syndrome, or in simple terms, a hangover. At this stage, in order to get back to normal and function, you already need to drink again to relieve the hangover. Without this, painful symptoms appear: tremors of the hands or the whole body, chills, sweating, tachycardia, rapid heartbeat, insomnia, anxiety, and high blood pressure. The list is long, creating a cycle: binge drinking, hangover relief, then more binge drinking. And the patient has developed maximum tolerance to alcohol. He can drink an enormous amount that would cause severe poisoning or even death in a non-drinker. I have friends who drink half a bottle of whiskey in the evening and seem fine, but they become irritable, aggressive, less intelligent, and their memory and focus decline. Nothing at all. And then the first serious consequences start to appear. The liver gets hepatitis, the pancreas gets pancreatitis, the stomach gets gastritis, blood pressure goes up, hypertension and heart problems develop, and there's insomnia. It may seem like it can't get worse, but the third stage is the most severe and destructive, causing total personality degradation and irreversible organ damage. And the central nervous system also suffers greatly. Our tolerance to alcohol drops sharply, the body is completely destroyed, the liver can no longer process ethanol, and a person gets drunk from very small doses. If you notice this, all of you, at the third stage, alcohol consumption becomes almost constant because the body can no longer function without it, and the binge only stops due to complete physical exhaustion. When, you are taken away by an ambulance, there is a deep damage to a person's psyche and central nervous system. All those around you, colleagues, friends, family, children, see this, and alcoholic encephalopathy develops, which is an irreversible brain damage. Delirium tremens appears, which we very politely call the squirrel. This is alcoholic dementia. Neurological disorders also become your companions, along with serious somatic diseases. Examples include liver cirrhosis, alcoholic pancreatitis, and cardiomyopathy, a severe heart condition. There is also total social degradation. He loses everything that is dear to him, his family, job, home, friends, hobbies, and his main motivation. That becomes obtaining and consuming alcohol. It's a frightening picture, isn't it? But you have to agree, it's impossible to skip the first stage and immediately end up in the second or third. It's impossible to become a binge alcoholic right away, but you can start by drinking on Fridays, then on Fridays and Saturdays, then meeting up with your girlfriends once a week to have some Prosecco, and then some doctor recommends having a glass of wine or whiskey every day. Redactor.
It seems like pretty alcoholism isn't a problem, it's not a disease, everything is fine. I drink champagne beautifully in the morning on my balcony, dressed up with stunning architecture behind me, or at the Bolshoi Theater with a glass of champagne. Of course, it sugarcoats things. It sugarcoats things and makes it seem like there's nothing wrong.
It's just that lighter alcohol creates the illusion of something harmless. But then those same beer alcoholics who come to me, their consumption increases. When converted to vodka, he's actually drinking as much as a bottle, just spread out over more time with lighter alcohol and lots of snacks. He thinks everything's fine just because he's not drinking vodka. He gets an ultrasound and already has fatty liver, pancreatic degeneration, beer heart, apathy, and heart failure. Now his diseases are competing to see which will kill him first. They haven't decided yet, but he thinks everything is fine because he's drinking something light.
Hello, friends. Let's talk about the effects on the brain. It has been proven that after taking even a small dose of alcohol, about 25 1 1/2 ounces, the higher brain functions or higher mental functions are fully restored. You might think it takes 2 to 3 hours, but no, it takes 2 to 3 weeks for things like thinking, memory, attention, perception, imagination, and speech to recover. So, if you drink more often than once every 2 weeks, the brain doesn't have time to recover from the effects of alcohol. And your consciousness is constantly in an altered state. And you don't even notice it. Moreover, up to 8,000 brain neurons can die from just 100 grams of vodka. You drink vodka, the neurons leave you. Why do you think you have a headache in the morning? Another harmful effect of alcohol on the brain is an increased risk of dementia, and this risk rises with every additional serving of alcohol. This is supported by studies from American, British, and even our own scientists. They analyzed a huge number of people, in some studies up to 500,000. They observed them for over 10 years. They found that drinking 1 to 3 servings of alcohol per week is linked to up to a 15% higher risk of developing dementia. Interestingly, people who gradually reduced their alcohol consumption were diagnosed with dementia later than those who continued to drink heavily as before. So, in the end, if you quit, even your background will give you a better chance of avoiding dementia.
You can ask questions and get answers to these. If you liked the video, don't forget to like our channel. See you next time. Welcome to our channel. Subtitles created by Dima Tozok. Welcome to our channel.
I regret it because I once believed there was a safe amount of alcohol. Many others are involved in this too. My colleagues once claimed there was a safe dose, but now Russian Public Opinion Research Center data shows nearly 40% still believe a safe dose of alcohol exists. However, this common misconception contradicts research that has even been published in the Lancet journal. Alcohol is officially classified as a Group 1 carcinogen, meaning it is recognized as one of the most dangerous substances that cause cancer, on par with, for example, asbestos, radiation, and tobacco. And alcohol consumption provokes at least 7 types of cancer, including the most common ones like colon cancer and breast cancer. The risk arises from the biological processes of ethanol breakdown in the body, which means it does not depend on the quality or price of the drink. If you think this only concerns cheap alcoholics, no, that's not the case. Any alcohol is dangerous, even the most elite, and the more a person drinks, the higher the risk. But recent data shows that half of all cases where we see alcohol-related cancer in Europe, for example, are caused by so-called moderate consumption, this moderate drinking. That's less than 1.5 liters of wine, less than 3.5 liters of beer, or 450 milliliters of strong alcohol per week. And it's important to understand that the health risk starts with the very first drop. Scientists haven't found a safe threshold below which alcohol stops being a carcinogen. Its harm, particularly its ability to cause cancer, appears immediately. There is also no scientific evidence that the hypothetical benefits of small doses of alcohol for the heart can outweigh the high risk of developing cancer. It's not just scary that some people think there's a safe dose. At one time I thought so too. The scariest thing is that people still believe the myths that alcohol is beneficial. Here are a few of them. Alcohol relieves stress. No, alcohol doesn't relieve stress. It only gives the illusion of it. And after the excitement comes depression, which is accompanied by feeling unwell, and the inner tension increases significantly. Myth number 2. Alcohol helps me with depression. On the contrary, my friend, alcohol makes depression worse and often pushes people towards suicide. That's why so many cases of suicide happen under the influence of alcohol. Myth number 3. Alcohol. It improves my sleep. I sleep better after drinking it. That's not true either. It actually disrupts sleep, and for people who drink for a long time, it causes extremely painful insomnia. This often leads to delirium tremens or other alcohol-induced psychosis. Alcohol improves creativity, and I program better or write better poetry when I drink. But alcohol is actually my enemy. It suppresses creativity. Destroying cerebral cortex neurons. Remember, when you drink, you lose your neurons. Alcohol increases potency, but it acts unpredictably. It can block erections and it can make ejaculation difficult. This can lead to blood stagnation and inflammatory diseases of the reproductive organs. Our favorite, prostatitis. It can also cause degeneration of the testicles, leading to decreased testosterone production, even to a drop in testosterone levels. One of the reasons is alcoholism, and as a result, potency is affected and you can forget about your sex life. One myth is that alcohol is good for the heart, and that's why, my friend, I drink a shot every evening. I heard it somewhere. Alcohol really does lower blood pressure, but then it rises even higher and it dilates the blood vessels, destroys the heart muscle, and causes cardiomyopathy. I've already mentioned this. Alcohol is said to help with colds, and some people even try to treat intestinal disorders with alcohol. In reality, alcohol lowers immunity, so people who drink get sick much more often, including with colds. Some people also say that alcohol cleanses the body of toxins and radiation. I've seen in movies that they give red wine on submarines. Harmful substances, including alcohol, are removed from the body by the liver and kidneys. The best way to detox is to have a healthy liver and healthy kidneys. Alcohol helps you warm up in cold weather. Alcohol really does dilate the blood vessels in the skin, and this creates a feeling of warmth, but at the same time, your body temperature drops and you can get frostbite. Women are more susceptible to alcoholism than men, and this is not a myth, it's true.
I started drinking at 19, already an adult, already living on my own. It all seemed beautiful. Restaurants, I was surrounded by girls just like me. Everything seemed very respectable. And that's it, the cycle begins. And you drink to relax, and when you wake up, you have serious depressive episodes, you feel awful, and you drink to get rid of them. The chemistry in your brain, which no one talked about back then, starts to adapt to these circumstances. You get a huge release of stress hormones, panic attacks kick in because alcohol affects your nervous system just as much, and you just get stuck in it. You sink and sink and sink, and I can't say that I ended up drinking in some alley or got into a fight or anything like that. No, I was always drinking in restaurants, expensive restaurants, cheaper restaurants, cafes, always. It was never in a stairwell. I had it until the end. It was beautiful.
They show alcoholism, they show Dolce Vita, everything is beautiful, cool, we have alcohol. Count in any movie or television series how many scenes show people drinking. Like in Basic Instinct, drinking and smoking look appealing, and everything else also goes into your subconscious. They don't show that woman drunk the next morning, I don't know, lying in the stairwell in her own mess. Yeah, nobody advertises the consequences. Everyone advertises the beginning, how cool it is, how great it is.
If at the beginning of the 20th century there were as many as 12 men with alcohol addiction for every woman, today women make up already 1/5 of all patients. Official statistics, which often underestimate the real numbers, show a steady increase. In recent years, the number of Russian women who have suffered from alcohol and have an addiction to it has increased from 11 to 15%. Women are often skilled at hiding problems, so the real situation may be even more serious. A study published in the British journal Addiction showed that women over 35 are 60% more likely to face alcohol addiction than their peers in the 1990s. Scientists believe that the increase in alcohol consumption among women may have been caused by changes in gender roles in society. Well, you know, the agenda, since women have become more active in public life. The normalization of alcohol, equal rights, and gender equality have changed women's roles in society, leading to increased drinking among women. Here I want to make a small disclaimer right away. This is not my personal opinion. I'm not a narcologist. This data was officially published in an authoritative journal that specializes in addictions, and the entire journal is dedicated to addictions. In another study, which was published this time by Americans, it is stated that alcohol-related mortality among women is increasing faster than among men. Over 5 years, the number of alcohol-related deaths increased by 27% among men and by 35% among women. It is worth noting that the differences in the effects of alcohol on the bodies of women and men have only been discovered in the last decade, and it was thought that it affected everyone the same way. The first comparative study involving both sexes was published only in 1990. Nearly all previous clinical studies on alcohol's effects were conducted only with male participants. This is partly explained by the fact that, for the sake of experimental purity, scientists tried to eliminate as many variables as possible that could affect the results. And since alcoholism was considered mainly a male problem and not something related to women, no one thought about the importance of studying its effects on women. The situation changed when the United States National Institutes of Health decided to include women in clinical studies, and we finally got new data. As for the differences between the effects of alcohol on women and men, it's important to know and remember the following. Female alcoholism develops much faster than male alcoholism, and women become addicted to alcohol twice as fast as men. In addition, they develop a condition called binge drinking much more often. Among drinkers, more than 80% of women are prone to this compared to 60% of men. Why is that? This is due to a combination of physiological and neurophysiological reasons. Physiology also increases women's vulnerability to alcoholism. The female body has more fatty tissue, which also affects alcohol metabolism. It dissolves well in fats and stays in the organs longer. The concentration of enzymes that break down alcohol, for example, the ones you know, is lower. Women have less alcohol dehydrogenase, so with the same amount of alcohol consumed, their blood alcohol level will be higher. Hormonal fluctuations during the menstrual cycle or menopause also affect how alcohol is absorbed. Liver damage in women also occurs a bit differently compared to men. The destruction of hepatocytes, which are liver cells, happens much faster in women, and it also takes a smaller dose for this to occur. Additionally, women are more likely to develop alcoholic hepatitis and liver cirrhosis, which means the liver stops functioning as a liver. Animal studies show us that the increased vulnerability of the female hepatobiliary system, that is, the gallbladder and liver, is linked to the effects of the main female sex hormone, estrogen, according to the United States National Institutes of Health. Mortality from liver cirrhosis among women aged 45 to 64 has increased to 57% compared to 21% among men. And among women aged 25 to 44, this rate increased by 18%, while among their male peers it decreased by 10%. Risks, let's talk about them, cannot be ignored. Breast cancer. Many studies show that even small amounts of alcohol raise the risk of developing it. And every additional 10 grams of pure alcohol, which is equivalent to about 113 milliliters of wine, can increase the likelihood of developing a tumor by 10%. Also, the risk lasts your whole life. I wrote about this on my Telegram channel. I'll leave the link below this video. According to the Breast Cancer Association, drinking alcohol 3 times a week increases the risk of the disease by 15%. It is with such seemingly low doses that most cases of breast cancer in the European Union are associated.
I might be criticized for saying this, but although women have long held important roles, society remains patriarchal. Behaviors not shameful for men are considered shameful for women, especially mothers and homemakers, and there are many stigmatizing sayings about women who drink. That's why women, as masters of camouflage and thanks to makeup and everything else, manage to hide their problem for longer, and they are very reluctant to seek help. If a man has a drinking problem, usually it's his wife who takes care of him, but it's rare for a husband to put up with his wife's alcoholism for years. It's easier for him to leave a relationship with an alcoholic woman.
Our generation has more access to information, more access to education. We understand more about what's going on. Our psychological awareness is much better, and of course we will move toward removing this stigma. Now, whether a person develops alcoholism or not doesn't depend on stigma. It depends on circumstances, their health, and how everything comes together. It doesn't matter what the neighbors or friends say. It doesn't matter if they blame you for drinking or not. This doesn't change the outcome of the disease in any way, but it does change the outcome of treatment. It won't be as shameful to come to a narcologist and ask for help.
A new modern trend is emerging. Quinagers, well here they're more often called MILFs. This word comes from the English words queen and age, similar to teenagers, but with the proud meaning of a truly royal age. That's what they call financially independent women over 45 who strive to maintain a vibrant lifestyle and care for themselves. And according to this trend, it's believed that at this age, you can finally start living life to the fullest, as they say. And many women are influenced by these trends, and in their minds, drinking alcohol makes them feel younger. Contrary to the common belief that people drink less as they get older due to health problems, the reality of recent decades shows quite the opposite. The trend is different. In some Western countries, every third elderly person consumes alcohol in amounts exceeding safe limits, and the number of women who drink is often growing especially rapidly, narrowing the traditional gender gap. People retire and stop working, and work no longer stops them from having a drink. A major study published in the journal Alcohol, Clinical and Experimental Research showed an increase in cases of dangerous and episodic or binge drinking among older people, especially among women with high levels of education and income. Brains alone are not enough to keep you from drinking. The study showed that 30% of men and 10% of women drink excessively, and 13% of men and 3% of women are prone to binge drinking. Remember what I said earlier, the female body is especially sensitive to ethanol, and this sensitivity only increases with age. Scientific data clearly shows that alcohol consumption after the age of 45 has a profound negative impact on the body and health, and this applies not only to women but also to men. The main reason lies in age-related changes after 45. The organs responsible for alcohol metabolism, such as the liver and kidneys, decrease in size and begin to function less efficiently. As a result, alcohol stays in the body longer and has more time to cause damage. The same dose you used to drink before will cause you more harm today. Alcohol also worsens osteoporosis, making bones more fragile. This significantly increases the risk of dangerous fractures, particularly in women, such as fractures of the neck, hip, and spine. This often leads to long-term disability, especially in old age. The cardiovascular system is also affected. Alcohol consumption increases the risk of myocardial infarctions, arrhythmias, arterial hypertension, heart and kidney failure, and also contributes to blood clot formation and a higher risk of strokes. I said scary things, but that's just how it is. Ultimately, regular alcohol consumption not only reduces the quality of life, but also directly shortens its duration, leading to premature aging of our entire body. And here, the principle of beauty inside out is obvious.
Right now, for example, I'm a workaholic and I didn't really understand what I would do outside of work. By the way, workaholics too, when they burn out, very often experience these swings between alcohol and work. So, if you fall into boredom or start going through a period of losing close relatives, well, for us, alcohol is a universal remedy for grief. Or on the contrary, to grieve even more intensely. If that's not enough, it's unique in its effects, like an antiseptic that suppresses the brain and central nervous system. In folklore, it's seen as an aphrodisiac, stimulant, sleep aid, appetite booster. Reference books list thousands of folk remedies for many illnesses. That effect isn't actually there, but people are convinced from childhood that it is.
Lonely alcoholism is another trend of recent years, a trend toward voluntary solitude. All of this appeared after the pandemic. Remember, after COVID-19. Remote work has become the new normal for many, and along with it, another troubling trend has gained strength: lonely alcoholism. Remote workers are drinking more, even during work hours. At the office, there was control, but now he drinks at home unseen. Every day risks turning into a Friday when you're working from home. By itself, it's a major source of stress for anyone because it erases important boundaries between personal space and work time. This blurring, in turn, negatively affects all areas of life: social, family, psycho-emotional, and physical. The Stakhanovitz monitoring system conducted an interesting study that was dedicated to the frequency of alcohol consumption during remote work. And according to its results, 37% of Russians allow themselves to drink alcohol during working hours while at home, and 14% do this pathologically often, meaning throughout the entire workday. He sits, types, and at the same time periodically pours himself some wine. This data echoes the findings of international studies. They were conducted during the pandemic, but showed alarming statistics. Norwegian scientists also found that among those who worked remotely, symptoms of alcoholism were present. Guess in what proportion? 40% of people. For comparison, among those who worked and continued to work in the office, this figure was only 25 to 28%. Interestingly, among people who lost their jobs during the pandemic and stayed at home, the level of alcohol-related disorders was lower than among remote workers and was almost the same as those who worked in the office. What does this tell us? This suggests that remote work itself was the key risk factor, not the general stress from the pandemic, and that remote work increased the risk of alcoholism. It was also noted that higher education and holding managerial positions were themselves associated with an increase. You'd think responsibility would keep people in check. Chances should be lower, but they're not. Alcohol use is rising.
Because when a person used to go to the office, they had a certain discipline. It's not really acceptable to show up to work like that, but staying at home creates the illusion. Well, who will notice? No smell or anything, as long as you don't overdo it. People relaxed over time. It's great. Nothing limits you now, and you don't even need company. There are no close people around who would try to bring you back to your senses, send you to get treatment. That's usually how people quietly drink themselves away alone. Or when a person enters the second stage of binge drinking, his wife leaves him after trying to help or something like that. He finds friends like himself or drinks alone and dies. Yes, we are social creatures. It's important to us how we look in the eyes of others. We can listen to the words of those close to us. But if you're alone, who will stop you?
I love our country because it's always paradoxical. There's usually some absurdity here, especially around alcoholism and similar issues. Before remote work, people stay at home, they put on pajama pants, a shirt on top, and basically no one is watching them, no one can smell them or look at them, and of course they end up drinking more. But what's even more interesting is that there are still professions where you often have to drink as part of the job. Like in law enforcement, often here, doctors. Yes, these collective drinking sessions still happen here. A boss can say to their subordinate, why aren't you drinking? Like, why aren't you joining everyone? You're standing out.
It really does exist in our country too. There's a common belief that people who are most prone to drinking alcohol are those with very low and very high incomes, while the middle class tends to show the most restraint. Grey's plays James in the comments of a loved one. This also follows as the professional and social status of a person. Well, let's say you could say. Income is correlated with the volume and frequency of alcohol consumption based on data from more than 50,000 employees. Statistics showed some very interesting and alarming figures. The proportion of alcohol consumers among qualified specialists and managers turned out to be higher than among ordinary workers. We believed more responsibility in work would make someone disciplined, but the opposite happened. They drink more frequently, but in smaller amounts than their subordinates. If a subordinate allowed himself to drink only on weekends, these comrades practically drank every weekday. Scientists suggest that this is related to their active participation in social life, which very often requires and involves drinking alcohol at celebrations, business meetings, and banquets. And we often see this too. All these generals who are forced to drink, businessmen who are forced to drink. For many successful people, expensive whiskey or wine is no longer just a drink, but part of a social ritual of belonging, a symbol of being part of a certain circle of people. And this kind of alcohol consumption is regular and very often controlled, but that doesn't make it any less risky for a person's health in the long run. High income and social achievement are not a guarantee of psychological well-being.
Money and success usually solve the issue of comfort. It's great to fly business class. It's great to go to a private clinic and not have to wait in line to see a doctor. These are matters of comfort, but they are never matters of inner happiness. Before filming, I called a prominent businessman I know who let me share his story anonymously. He grew up in a very difficult family. He didn't have a father. Like many others in the 1990s, his father drank, and his mother took everything upon herself. All his life, he tried to prove to his parents that he was a good person. Like, look at me, I've achieved success here, I've achieved success there. He built a business empire. Look, I'm successful, I'm cool, I'm featured in magazines. But his father drinks, and he doesn't care at all whether his son has achieved anything or not. Inside, this grown man is still a little boy who just wants to be noticed. And no business classes will fix that.
If you look at the statistics, they have more opportunities for treatment, more chances to live their lives in a more interesting way. So yes, they drink under certain circumstances. Some people burn out, some have hereditary issues, and there are other reasons too, but each case needs to be considered individually. Well, of course, all these bosses, it's alpha competition, there's a very high level of stress, there are early heart attacks, and many of them, especially officials and military personnel, turn to drinking as a kind of doping. Specifically,
Loneliness affects not only office workers who found themselves one-on-one with their home walls. Young mothers on maternity leave also find themselves in a very similar situation of isolation. It is in this environment that a special cultural phenomenon has emerged in recent years, known as wine moms, and sometimes also called mom svinishko. This trend is very popular, by the way, in the United States. It came to us through social media, and it is actively discussed in our social networks. And today, the information space is actively filled with memes and various videos about young mothers who can't handle the burden of motherhood. And in the evening, you definitely need a glass of wine. All of this is filled with humor, it all seems funny. And on marketplaces, you can easily find glasses with the inscription, "Mom doesn't drink, Mom is just relaxing," T-shirts with the same slogans, and other products with this theme. All this forms a behavioral model of a drinking mom seems safe, acceptable, and even trendy.
I would give my life for you, drop by drop, little by little.
why aren't you pouring the cognac?
That's it, your blood pressure went up, and right away you need a shot of cognac.
Subtitles by Dimatorzok.
This is the coolest promotion through target groups on social networks. Of course, you already have your profile. What are you interested in? You, a young mom, multitasking, getting tired, start monitoring something, and then advice pops up to go to the doctor, deal with postpartum depression, somehow work with psychologists. Because, excuse me, having a baby is a very serious change in social roles, especially if the husband doesn't really support the woman in this situation but takes advantage of her dependence. In addiction medicine, this is called attachment, meaning that any negative emotion can be easily overridden by a chemical molecule. If you're tired, it will relax you. If you're nervous, it will slow down your central nervous system. That mental noise will go away. And then there are the stylish, beautiful moms, and in these groups, it's all about the atmosphere. Some interesting snacks, everyone is cheerful, with perfect teeth and perfect bodies. How could you not fall for it? They sold you such a great image.
When your hormones haven't settled, when you're struggling, you're also playing this game of controlled madness, as I call it. When we drink alcohol, our consciousness changes, and alcohol in the brain affects two things: excitation and inhibition. Make it so that they're out of balance. So not only have your hormones not settled yet, but you're also creating an imbalance in your head, and that's hard. It's tough and impacts children's upbringing. I think it's a huge tragedy, and it's really bad that now it's being glossed over with humor.
Alcohol and postpartum depression. This alarming trend is easily explained by research published in the British journal Addiction, which we've already referenced. Among young mothers, there is a noticeable increase in alcohol consumption. Often, it's not just some kind of fatigue behind this, but it could actually be real postpartum depression. According to World Health Organization data, 10 to 15 young mothers out of every 100 face this problem. A meta-analysis involving more than 12,000 people showed that in Russia, a third of women experienced symptoms of postpartum depression. Without realizing it, young mothers use alcohol as a way to self-medicate this depression. Alcohol acts like an antidepressant, and the risk of developing alcohol dependence in people with depression is twice as high. Scientists from the University of Texas at Austin, during an experiment on mice, discovered that alcohol blocks N-methyl D-aspartate receptors. And what does this lead to? It leads to changes in brain activity and results in a rapid improvement in mood. We immediately start to feel good, but at the same time, the level of the Fragile X mental retardation protein decreases, and it's very important. It affects the production of one of the inhibitory substances in the nervous system, gamma-aminobutyric acid. This helps to calm you down and reduce symptoms of depression. And it seems to get a bit better. But alcohol only relaxes the body and improves mood in the short term by increasing dopamine, the hormone of pleasure and anticipation. But later, the body adapts to the production of this hormone, and more of it is needed to achieve the same effect. You'll need increasing wine for the same effect. In addition, tetrahydroquinone is formed. This is a substance that blocks the production of dopamine and serotonin. That means a person stops enjoying life without stimulation and falls even deeper into the depressive moods they were trying to escape from. This is exactly how depression and addiction are formed. They also discovered the reverse dependence. Women in the postpartum period who were helped by specialists to completely give up alcohol suffered from depressive episodes less often, meaning that life without alcohol is better, there will be less depression, and alcohol isn't needed. In the postpartum period,
not a single patient with depression has been cured by alcohol, because if you take the word antidepressant, you need to remove the prefix anti from alcohol. It's a depressant. A small dose gives a slight release of dopamine, the nervous system becomes a bit more activated, as do the gamma-aminobutyric acid receptors. The main inhibitory neurotransmitter is suppressed throughout, starting with the cortex. Here's anxiety, worries, some thoughts, your child bothered you 20 times during the day, and something else. The nervous system is overexcited, so take a suppressant. A phenazepam pill works the same way, but you can't just get rid of it nicely, right? It's not for fun. You won't be able to show off after taking a phenazepam pill. You'll look really strange. And of course, wine, sure, it'll relax you for a moment, but it won't solve your problems and the depression won't go away. Moreover, if there is a suicidal risk, very often after drinking alcohol, a person suddenly finds the strength to actually put a big end to this story. But who thinks about that? It was beautifully sold through social media.
let's look at children and gadgets. This is a very dangerous hidden threat. Over the past 10 years, children all over the world have started spending significantly more time in front of screens, and this trend is already widespread even at preschool age. According to MTS statistics, in Russia, almost 60% of preschoolers use gadgets for 1 to 2 hours every day. By the way, I don't let my child use them. Younger students spend even more time on screens. The vast majority of elementary school children already have their own phone, and by the age of 12, more than half of them spend 3 to 5 hours a day on gadgets. Swedish scientists analyzed questionnaires from 55,000 students and found a worrying connection. Editor: excessive use of gadgets in childhood and adolescence is associated with an increased risk of developing various mental and behavioral problems in the future. Subtitle editor Alexandrova: this also includes the risk of later alcohol abuse. That is, if your child spends a lot of time on gadgets, the risk that they will become an alcoholic increases significantly. This influence occurs through several key mechanisms. Let's figure it out. First of all, overuse of smartphones and other gadgets is closely linked to decreased self-control and the development of impulsive behavior in children and teenagers. This increased impulsivity, in turn, heightens overall vulnerability to developing any kind of addiction, including alcohol addiction. Studies of teenagers in different countries, not just ours, such as South Korea and Brazil, for example, they show a statistical link between the amount of time children spend on social networks, games, and watching videos, and a higher frequency of experimenting with alcohol and tobacco. The more time your child spends on gadgets, the greater the risk of smoking and alcohol use. American scientists have also found that students who are addicted to smartphones, well, let's be honest, we're all addicted to smartphones these days. They more frequently display alcohol dependence and stronger symptoms of anxiety and depression. If you already have certain tendencies, and then you add a tendency or dependence on overusing gadgets, the chances of developing alcohol dependence will be higher.
The risk is higher there. It's all because these gadgets and clip thinking are constant injections of quick dopamine, whether it's games, videos, or something else. These children have problems with studying, they're restless, it's a kind of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that the parents themselves have created. A child raised by a gadget since age 4 now struggles greatly. Without this digital stimulation, of course, there will be extremes. It could be gambling addiction, it could be alcohol, or maybe something even stronger. But now constant sources of these quick positive emotions are already needed. If parents don't pay attention and when they're at home, they're on their gadgets themselves. Everyone is in their own world. Here's a classic story. A child with gadget addiction is brought to me. I step into the hallway and all three are on their phones. I say to the parents, why are you making complaints about your child if you're the same way? You bought it for him. You don't communicate during meals because you're on your phones. You don't have common interests. So why would he be any different?
In recent decades, Russia's average age of first alcohol exposure has dropped sharply. In the 1960s, men began drinking as early as 2 to 4 years old. I don't drink, but I tried it at about the same age. In the 90s, it was around 17, but now it's dropped to 14. Teen alcoholism progresses 3 to 4 times faster than in adults. Physical dependence can develop in just 1 to 2 years, and in some cases, in just a few months. The transition from occasional use to regular use happens very quickly and rapidly in teenagers. This is due to the immaturity of the liver's enzymatic systems, particularly alcohol dehydrogenase, which causes ethanol to produce strong and toxic intoxication in teenagers. And imagine, all of this happens to a fragile, young, and not yet fully developed psyche. In addition, the adolescent brain is more vulnerable to the negative effects of alcohol. Its use at this age can disrupt normal brain development, leading to long-term changes in its structure and functions. The Central Research Institute for Health Organization and Informatization conducted a very large study that lasted for as long as 20 years. School children across Russian cities completed a questionnaire, and here's what the scientists found. Overall, in 20 years, the number of school children who consume alcohol has almost halved. The numbers are slightly higher for boys than for girls. That's good news, but there's also bad news. If in 2000 the rate of frequent alcohol use, meaning 2 times a month or more, was significantly higher among boys, then that's it. In 2010, girls started drinking alcohol as often as boys, and another 10 years later, the rate of frequent alcohol use among girls began to exceed that of boys. Our history has never seen anything like this before.
If we consider the consequences for the reproductive system, of course, alcohol affects the female reproductive system much more strongly because all the eggs are formed at once. Poisoning from childhood increases the risk of harm and unhealthy offspring. Now, many specialists note a sharp increase in infertility, including the fact that girls have started using not only alcohol but other substances as well.
There has also been a serious shift in the motives for alcohol use among teenagers. If in the late 90s they mostly drank with friends outside the home, then in the last 15 years teenagers have been drinking in the family circle. Nearly half of boys and 60% of girls first try alcohol with their families. That is, you yourselves let your children drink. Of course, some of you will say, well, at least it's all under control. Maybe you'll do the same with drugs in your kids, since alcohol is a drug too. So, why are you doing this? Maybe the point is you drink and set a bad example. If you don't want your child to drink, just talking won't help. Show by your own example, show by your attitude toward alcohol that you don't use it, you don't respect it, you don't need it in your life, and it brings no benefit. Because most of you say all this, but do something completely different. You say, don't smoke, thank you, welcome to our channel, subtitles by Dimotorzok.
If you care about your child, the last thing you should do is get them used to psychoactive substances. Just like smoking parents who say it's poison, your child will steal their first cigarette, and it's the same with alcohol. These are parental figures, figures who are perceived uncritically. If they give you something, you don't think of it as poison. Instead, it's a celebration, it's cool. And that's already a pro-alcohol belief. Where will it lead? Well, at the very least, the person is brainwashed in a certain way, and nothing good comes from it if the people the teenager trusts in the family are poisoning them.
I have children of alcoholics, adults, children of alcoholics, both girls and boys. And they say, I used to look at my parents as a child and think, I'll never be like that, but then they grew up and became even worse than their parents. And here, only by your own example can you teach, show, and create sober celebrations. It's great when the family decides to have New Year's without alcohol and it's not an issue for them. Yes, let's do it. On January 1st, we'll go sledding. It'll be great. Some families say New Year's isn't complete without booze. No, of course not. Children are our copies. Just copy and paste.
There is definitely a good trend. The number of young people who don't drink is growing. From 2006 to 2019, the proportion of young people who drink dropped almost 2.5 times, from 62% down to 27%. This trend reflects a broader move among young people toward healthier lifestyles, with more choosing healthy living. As sociologists note, Zoomers not only drink less, but are also more actively involved in sports, and overall, they look to the future with greater optimism. And their consumer habits really do differ from those of older age groups. The overall increase in sobriety in the country is largely due to the younger generation. Who do you think made the most significant contribution to this positive trend? Young people under 25, and that's certainly encouraging. In this group, the number of teetotalers has more than doubled, from 25.5 to 55. I think awareness campaigns in the country, including videos like these, have greatly contributed to this. For comparison, among people aged 25 to 40, this figure actually increased by 15, and among the older age group, it jumped from 18 to 30. Thus, today, the main risk group still consists of middle-aged and older people. It would seem that this is the most reasonable, conscious, and mature group, those from 35 to 65. And the new generation chooses health, and awareness is gradually changing the overall picture of alcohol consumption in Russia, forming a new social standard of behavior. But what are we, the adults, the smart and reasonable ones, doing? We keep drinking alcohol, and we're drinking more and more of it. Trends for a healthy lifestyle are emerging, such as matcha raves. These trendy daytime events swap alcohol for matcha tea and lively night parties for energetic daytime dances, aiming to get home before 10 p.m. This trend reflects the growing desire among young people to lead a healthy lifestyle, avoid the negative effects of alcohol, and enjoy active recreation.
Of course, now there are a lot of people on social media who are into a healthy lifestyle, who run, who jump. Coffee parties have even appeared on social media. These are parties with a disc jockey, but everyone drinks non-alcoholic coffee.
When it comes to alcohol, statistics show that they've become more reasonable, but then alcohol vendors will come up with some mechanism and make it trendy among Zoomers. They drink non-alcoholic beer, but that's just the first step. You still form these stereotypes, and it's only half a step from non-alcoholic to alcoholic.
Tell me, dear adults, why? In the paradigm where we were supposed to raise the younger generation, have we now moved to a paradigm where we should take example from the younger generation and become like them? Like the younger generation that refuses alcohol, refuses tobacco, and starts doing sports. We, the ones who were supposed to raise them, are becoming their wards. Please think about what's happening in the country. It's terrible, and while it's not too late yet, start your life over. Give up alcohol. Take a look at yourself from the outside, while you haven't yet reached the second or third stage. Admitting a problem is the first step to solving it. Have an honest talk with yourself. As there is a continuation, a short, simple, easy dialogue, continuation, admit the problem, continuation, to be continued, welcome to our channel, to be continued, welcome to our channel. Problems that exist in real life can only be changed by real actions, real deeds.